Welcome back to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're honored to be with our next guest, our good friend, Kellie Turnage. She is Territory Manager for Bradford Health Services. How are you doing, Kellie?
Hey, Jeremy. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you have the rare opportunity to combine your passion, your purpose with your career. And so really cool opportunity. And we'll dive into more of your story. But let's start with some context. When you talk about Bradford Health Services, give us an overview a little bit. How do you describe when someone says, what does Bradford Health Services do? How do you describe what all your organization does?
Yeah, Bradford Health Services is a drug and alcohol treatment center. So we help people get sober, and we can meet them along the lines of wherever they are. We have inpatient services. We have outpatient services. We have 12-step programs, medical on hand. We have everything under the sun. So there's a treatment center here in Memphis and Germantown. A lot of people don't know that we're there, but we are located in Germantown, and we have a phenomenal intensive outpatient program. And what that is it's actually what I went through. It is an opportunity to meet every night, really work on the healing and the recovery aspect, healing, getting sober. We have facilities all over the state of Alabama and Tennessee. So they're inpatient, outpatient, long-term, short-term. Addiction's an interesting thing to talk about. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it doesn't discriminate. You get people from all walks of life. So I look forward to talking to you a little bit more about that as we keep going.
Yeah. And I think to your point, let's go ahead and stay on that thread, because when you talk about addiction, it doesn't, age, race, gender, all of these things, faith, it affects literally everyone. And it is something that permeates society. And especially when you look at the impact of the pandemic, where so many are turning to drugs and alcohol for the escape. And I feel like now more than ever, you're seeing the floodgates open up for having these conversations in a good way, in terms of getting people to understand, hey, there is help out there. At the same time, dealing with the pandemic and dealing with the effects and dealing with everything that is going on right now. And so talk about kind of that aspect of the 12-step program and really where this starts with seeking help.
Absolutely. So, there's so many different places I could start. You're exactly right, though. It doesn't discriminate. No one comes into recovery on a winning streak. Usually their first day in recovery, they didn't win the lottery the day before. But how one becomes an addict is really interesting. Addiction is a disease, and one becomes an addict one of a few different ways. They've either drank or drugged themselves into being that way. They're genetically predispositioned, or potentially had a whole lot of trauma in their past. And so, for me, it was a combination of the three. And for a lot of people it is. But, it's important to realize that there is hope. And so you asked me about the 12 steps. The 12 steps have saved my life, truly. I mean, there's a lot of things along the way that I can pinpoint as being, God's hand was just all over that. And coming into the rooms of the 12-step program, it's really my whole life I've been taught, do more, get more, have more, buy more, be more, get more. And then you come in and the message is surrender, let go, let God. You'll have an opportunity to clean up your past later on down in the steps. And you'll have an opportunity to give back and to serve others. But that's really what it all boils down to, is realizing that I'm not the one in control of my life. I have a higher power that is in control of my life. And I believe that higher power, who I call God, my Heavenly Father, put me on this planet to be sober. I mean, I really believe all those things in my past happened for a reason. And somewhere along the way, in about year 1 or 2 of recovery, it didn't matter to me anymore how I got there. I called truce. I said, it doesn't matter. What matters is what I do with it. So everybody falls down. It's how you get back up that means everything.
Absolutely. We've had a chance to interview you where you share more of this story on the Changemakers podcast. And so I definitely encourage everyone to go to the Changemakers podcast. And it's a heartfelt, emotional podcast. And it's one where you really do share your story. And it's so impactful and powerful. So I definitely encourage listeners to go there and check out the Changemakers podcast. Carry that forward, though, because as you mentioned, once you start to let go, that's when the healing can begin. And there are multiple avenues, as you mentioned, multiple facilities all across kind of this southeastern footprint. So talk about where it starts for someone, either as an individual or a family member who says, hey, I want my loved one to go through and learn more about this program. How does it start? Where does it start?
Absolutely. It starts by making a phone call and asking for help. It really does. I mean, that is sometimes the hardest part of it all, though. Especially as individuals, we're scared. That's what it all boils down to. We can call it whatever we want, but it's rooted in love or it's rooted in fear. And we're scared. I'm afraid of being found out. I'm afraid I'll lose my job. I'm afraid I'll lose my kids. We make a kind of a joke in the rooms and say, something brings you in. It's either your love or the liver or your law or the law. Something pulls you in to realizing, because it's a self-diagnosed disease. One has to recognize, I know at the core of my existence that I'm an alcoholic and that nothing's going to change that. And so I've got to treat my disease every day. When I recognize that I'm a sick person and I need to get well, it was like the weight of the world was lifted off my chest. Oh, that makes sense. I've got an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. And when I put alcohol or drugs into my body, it changes me. And it changes me for the worst. And so, as I've shared in the podcast, I don't know, it may have been a couple of years ago, but when we did it, and a lot's happened since then, but I've stayed sober through it. Thank you, to the Lord. I mean, it's truly by his grace. But I could not have done this had it not started at Bradford, reaching out and saying, how do I get help? I called Bradford. And if we can't help someone, I promise you, I'm so rooted in the recovery community in Memphis. Our folks that work there we will find you help. If not at Bradford, somewhere else. It's that important to me.
Yeah. And it goes back to tying in your passion and purpose with your career. And I think that's just like you're saying, hey, I'm going to help you personally one way or the other to make sure that you get the help you needed and that you need. Talk about on your end, some of the things that you wish everyone knew about inpatient, outpatient. Like when you talk about the recovery programs at Bradford Health Services,
Right.
What are some things that you wish everyone knew?
So there's a lot that people don't know about getting sober that I wish they did. So let me just start there. Oftentimes when people are actively using, drinking, I know for myself, I did go to an inpatient facility in Memphis back in February of 2016. It's no longer here anymore. And I had to go through a medical detox. And the reason I had to go through a medical detox is because I was taking countless number of pills and alcohol. And so I couldn't just quit. It's very dangerous when you're taking certain things to just quit. And you need a medical detox. It's super important. If I had not had a medical detox, I could have gone into seizures and died. As you well know, with my story, I came back to Austin from my inpatient experience, and my best friend found me mostly dead on my bathroom floor in a coma. And so while I was in that coma, I went through all the DTs, I went through all the withdrawals, and when I came back to Memphis with a hole in my neck the size of a quarter from where they'd taken the trach out, I didn't have to go through a medical detox. So I went straight to Bradford's intensive outpatient program. So I was, I could do that at that point. But at the when most people think of rehab or treatment, they think 28 days somewhere. And oftentimes that does involve a medical detox, yes. And it involves really some healing in the beginning. Those first 30 days are just so crucial to start clearing out your mind and your body. and getting prepared for taking that first step, which is saying, I surrender. This is not, I cannot control it and I need help. And that's really so important. We've got some long-term treatment centers, and I got a chance last week to go visit all of our facilities in Alabama. And let me tell you, it was such a phenomenal experience. We have a long-term treatment, which is a year program for women in Tuscaloosa and a year program for men in Opelika, right outside of God's country, Auburn, Alabama. And I went and I got there and I walked in, and I mean, the way that these guys and girls live, and they teach them life skills and they help them get ready to launch back out there. It took me definitely a full year to, get my sea legs out from under me. So, but there are lots of different, no matter where someone is, but if someone is thinking to themselves, I think I might need to control my drinking, or I think I might need to get help. Half of all Americans are affected by this. I mean, it's crazy. And it starts at such a young age right now. And people are just trying to cover up, hide, push down, whatever it is that they're feeling. And so when someone gets sober, I know from sponsoring women, I've got a couple of new sponsees right now that are, 30, 60 days sober. And they're calling me saying life is worse than it was before I got sober. Well, of course it is. You're starting to feel, it's hard. It's hard. And that's why most people won't do it. Most people won't do what it takes to get sober because it's hard. But I'd rather do hard than dead.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously this is a very real conversation, but to your point, like anything, when you open your eyes, you're going to start seeing again, and the pain is going to set in. But like you said, too, you become stronger, you become more resilient. You realize, okay, wait a second, I can do this. Mm-hmm. That then leads to more confidence and puts you on a complete different trajectory, being healthy and healed, and yet being strong. And I think there is a piece of this where it is tough, but you can become stronger, more resilient, and more successful because of it, and live life in a whole different way with a whole new kind of clean slate, and mentally like enjoying and being appreciative of life that you don't necessarily have before that.
I know it's crazy. I'm grateful that I'm here today. I'm grateful that it's happened. And most people, I think it's got to be secretive. It's personal, but for me, it's not private, because if God saved my life from literally knocking on death's doors and I did nothing about it, this would be in vain. My good friend who went through IOP with me, intensive outpatient at Bradford back in March or April, May, part of June of 2016. This is super important. I wanted to share this story. His name's Chris, and he sat beside me the whole time, and just this young guy, went to Ole Miss, and just as cute as he can be. And we coined out, we graduated, we finished IOP at the same time. And I had a conversation with him in the parking lot, and he gave me the biggest hug. And I said, Chris, you got to come to Memphis and go to some meetings with me, or I'll even come to South Haven and go to some meetings with you. You can't do this on your own. You can't do this on your own. And we buried him 3 months later. And his mom hugged me at the funeral, and she said, don't let this go in vain. And I'm telling you what, like, that's what fuels my passion, because I know so many people like Chris out there that just think, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll get help when it's time. I'll get help when the consequences get worse. Well, you don't know that you're going to have that time. So sorry, I interrupted you and gave you that long spiel.
Yeah, no. Talk about the health side of this, the services side for families, because there are a lot of free resources that Bradford Health Services puts out for families.
Absolutely.
So obviously this is a personal journey and fight, but it's also a family journey and fight. So talk about some of the family resources.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, this is a family disease. It affects everybody. The biggest lie an addict has is I'm only hurting myself. It affects the whole family. And so Bradford offers free resources for families or concerned persons of an addict. So we have group sessions, family sessions that are offered to the community. If you're interested, please reach out to me. I'm happy to plug you in. There are so many resources in Memphis that will offer people the help they need, because oftentimes the addict isn't ready to get help. You can't force it. Oftentimes they're not ready. But as a family member or a concerned person, there are 12-step meetings out there. There are resources for people to get plugged into so that they can get help, so that they can learn how to deal with it. Super important.
Yeah. Wrap up, because as you mentioned, reaching out to you, you can be that personal liaison to help and get people to where they need to go. So talk about contact information, website, your email. Where would you direct people to get in touch with you and also learn more about Bradford Health Services?
Yeah, absolutely. They can reach out to me. My cell phone number is 901-690-6287. Kellie Turnage at bradfordhealth.net is also my email address, and I'm happy to spread that across. Like I said, if we can't help someone, we'll get them to the right spot. And I think that's important to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kellie, thank you for all you do. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Jeremy.